your
Waxing and waning. Waxing and waning.
that is
You
what
know me.
will
Hold it down.
show.
Cookie gang.
Okay, there it goes. So did it start? Okay, so for today, where is it? Let's show this. How come it's not showing? Okay, there you go. There it goes.
So
Okay, so today we're talking about what?
I messaged you earlier. Maybe it's old age or maybe it's the slight migraine I had. But I don't feel like we ended 28. We stopped right before C. So I think you need to cover like that last little piece before we move into 29. But it's quick. I mean, it's nothing
Okay.
over the top,
I
but it's
mean,
a couple lines.
what stuck out to me was that Jacob was like the way he was the way he was talking to God. That kind of stuck out to
Yeah,
me.
that's why I don't think we talked about this last time because I had a note about that and I was like, I don't remember us talking about it. So you might want to do just a quick recap and then set the scene before we continue
Okay.
to 29:30.
I don't really remember his dream. I just know.
Recap real quick because I went through it this morning.
Yeah, I just know that he had the dream. But again, what I remember is how he was talking to God, and I was like,
Yeah, your boy, your boy is wild. All right, you guys. Before Kelly, this is Kelly's week, but I'm just gonna do this recap because she legit thought that she only had to do 29. So at the end of 28, or where we last left off, Jacob swindled his big bro Esau out of his birthright, and it just wasn't looking good. So his mom sent him to go live with his uncle until Esau could calm down. That's what she said. Anyway, so Jacob go on his little merry way, and then along the way he decided to stop and catch his Z's. It's a long trek to Haram. Anyway, so he fall asleep, and he has a very vivid dream in which it's basically like from where he is, there are stairs that lead him from the earth to the heavens. And he has this elaborate conversation with God in which God talks to him. And he's like, yeah, I'm God, the God of your father, the God of your grandfather. Um, and I just want you to know that I'm looking out for you and what you're about to go through. And at the end of it all, you're going to come back to this land and it's going to be yours. And he makes these promises to him. So then, let me backtrack and say Jacob fell asleep on a rock. I don't know why he picked up the rock, but that's where he decided to lay his head on the rock. So he wake up from the dream and he's like, "Oh, bet." He says, has the nerve to part his two little lips and says, "If God really does the things that he said he was finna do, oh, that's my God too." And I was like, Jacob, what has happened to you, bruh? Like, Jacob is a wild boy. Like, he just really, really wild. And so my two notes from that section was that one, I really want to have some vivid dreams of God like that because Jacob and Abraham had some really vivid dreams in which they were able to communicate with God. And I was kind of jealous. Also, at the end of that section is when Jacob decided to take the rock that he had slept on and place it down and make it a memorial. And he renamed the whole land. I don't know who made him governor of the city that he could just rename the land that was already called something, and he decided to call it. What did he decide to call it again? He changed the name.
Bethel, Bethel.
Yeah, he changed it to Bethel. It already had a name, but he was like, "Oh, I had a dream. This place is now Bethel." I guess he could do that. And my last piece. Oh, before he got to the if part, he was like, God is here. And so he said, oh, God's really here. And then he was also like nervous. It says in the text he was also afraid. And I marked that down as something to talk about because like I thought of it as having like a healthy fear of God. Like he woke up and was like, oh, God's here and I ain't even know. But he was also like, God is everywhere and I ain't even know. And he probably was looking back at some of the shady things that he had been doing over the past couple of years.
That's what I was
It was
thinking.
like,
Yeah, that's what I
when
was
he
thinking.
travels, like he travels
Did
away.
he do that too?
Yeah. So at the end of it, he graced the memorial, and that's where we hear mention of this 10% tithings at the end of that. And I want to know why he decided on 10%. He just legit just said, "Oh, it's gonna be 10%."
Mm.
And so that was the end of that, and then he goes on his travels, and Kelly is gonna take it away unless she has something to add to that little speck.
Again, I mean, I was just when I got to the end, and I was like, if God in will indeed be, and then if I return safely, then it's like I wonder if we do that with our actions. I definitely know I ain't never say nothing like that. Like, but do we do it with our actions? It's like a bargaining, like as if you lack faith and don't believe, and I see it when it happened, type of thing. Um, and I'm sure it's like, when you're young in your faith, or you're just not quite where you need to be. Our actions probably are like that. So I just was like, but he kind of said that, and then it says it's a vow. Like he was like, if you do this, then this, like a conditional type of situation. And I don't think I necessarily work like that. Like it kind of feels like you testing them, and I didn't really think that was the most respectful thing to do. But again, being younger in your faith, or not really having the faith that you need at the time, kind of puts you in a position to kind of have that kind of relationship with God. Like, when you're babies in Christ, you kind of like, oh, it's like God is almost like a genie to a lot of people. I need this, and you only talking to him about what you need, or you only I was just talking to my son about the conversations that he has with God. I was like, do you only call Nana when you say your grace? Or do you try to develop a relationship with your Nana? In order to do that, you have to talk to her more than just how you thankful for your food. Like, so that's our relationship and how you develop it. So I think it was just him having a younger relationship with God. Um, the other part that I didn't have this until you said what you said about having a vivid dream and how you would want something like that. I it wasn't when you okay, so when you said a vivid dream, I was like, yeah, I have those. But when you said communication, it's never really a communication, a back and forth communication with me and God. I don't really know that I necessarily heard from him. I know that he hears me, type of thing. In this particular dream, I feel like when people say I heard from God, it's typically not what we know of, like how people in the Bible, like the heavens open and a voice comes down, type of thing. Is more like through the actions of others, or confirmation of others, or something like that. Not that God doesn't speak to some people. It just hasn't been my experience that clouds opened and thunderclapped for me, or a sweet still voice. Like I feel like I hear from the Holy Spirit, which again, God, but it's usually like happenstance. Like I feel like that was God speaking to me from this situation.
Right. Yeah. I definitely feel the same way. Like you have a thought or inkling and it is God talking to us, but then we don't necessarily trust that it's God until it's reaffirmed in a particular, way or manner that okay, God is really speaking to me and telling me to move in this situation. But I mean like how him and Abraham had legit like
Mhm.
saw him and they had a back and forth type of exchange. And I know in general, because I have really vivid dreams to the point that I have a lot of deja vu, and sometimes I really enjoy it. Sometimes it gives me goosebumps because it's like, oh hey, i I feel like I'm on the right track because God gave me this vision, and it's like, okay, he already told me this is going to happen. Like, that's so dope that I did the steps that I was supposed to do to get here. Like, coolness.
Does your deja vu stop when you notice that it's deja vu? For me, as soon as I say it's over.
No.
Mine stops. Like if I
I be
say,
like,
you about to say this, that, and the other, and then he say this, that, and the other, and then whatever else supposed to happen, I don't even remember anything, and I feel like I should have just been quiet.
no, that doesn't happen. But going back to the other point that you said about the if then, so I feel like people do say it, and it's not necessarily a conditional thing, but people be like, man, God, if you get me out of this mess, I swear I'm gonna start going to church every single Sunday except for Easter and Christmas. Like they do bargain with him, maybe not to the extreme that he did, and
Yeah.
predictive situation. But when people are in the thick of some situations, because he ain't even get in the situation yet, he was just like, oh, if he cashed me out, oh, that's my man, 100 grand. But most of the time, people give them if this comment, if they're like their backup is up against the wall, they're like, God, please deliver us to me. I promise I'm not gonna do this, blah blah blah. And they do put that type of test or pressure on God to perform. I mean, he can do whatever you want to, clearly, but I think people do that more often than not. And I don't know how often they verbalize it so much as think it, but I do know that when your back is up against the wall, we are more prone to try to ask God for, a little favor. Like, I ain't asked you for nothing all year, man. You can't look out, like he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm sure we probably do something like that with our actions. But yeah, I agree with you. We definitely say those things.
Yeah.
Even if they're not to the degree of that, it's still said. So I mean, I guess we should all be able to relate. But when I read it, I was like, So that does wrap up 28. And then we get to 29. And if you have watched past episodes, this was kind of the part that I was like, oh, I want to talk about that. So it just happened that I was able to be the one to talk about it because Morgan and I exchange, we go back and forth.
She was big mad last week when it was my turn to go, and here she is getting to the part. I wanted to talk about that part. She wanted to talk about the whole story of Jacob. Honestly, she didn't want me to talk about Jacob at all because the whole story is a telenovela.
I do. I am willing to share the Bible, but like share the study of sharing the Bible. But it was just honestly, this whole God's chosen family, when I was reading this on my own, I was like, I don't think people really understand. As a matter of fact, this part of the Bible is when I was explaining it to you, and that sparked the whole cookies and Christ thing. Because I was like, I don't think people really read it knowing that like they can really relate, or it's as, I don't want to call it entertaining, but it's not as dry as a lot of people may feel like the Bible is. It depends on your heart and your mindset when you're reading. I'm not gonna say there's not some books in here that's like, whew.
That's what I was gonna say, because
when they be like, I forgot what book is in, but so and so begot such and such, and it's like a lineage. Yeah, it can get a little tough.
I think a lot of the Old Testament is very story-esque and brings us to a certain part. But there are still some books, because like when I'm doing my scripture writing plan, I just got back into it for April because I fell off, bad me. And I'm going through the different verses. Some of them I'd be like, this. I was going through the book and I was like, I don't know how we gonna make this exciting for cookies and rice as I'm writing.
I just know it's gonna happen. I know it's gonna happen. My goal, honestly, I don't want to skip any of it because I want it to be what it is. Like if we get there and be like, y'all just bear with us. Like,
It's gonna be a few cold months.
Yeah, that might be, we can cover this in a day, this whole book. So I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's worth, but like we missed some stuff, like getting to Song of Solomon, like you be like, is this still the Bible or is this a little Zane? Is this a Zane book? Like it can really get into some of the stuff that we're interested in and we can really have fun. Like that is the whole like message of Print Pray Slay, is like Christians can have fun. You can really read the Bible and study and have this relationship with God and have relationships with other people and it be fun and not like this chore. So that's really what we want to bring to you guys when we do Cookies in Christ. And I'm hoping it comes off that way. But I'm sure we will have fun. When we get there, we're going to reflect and be like, remember back in Genesis? Yeah.
Before I throwing back on the whole purpose, I sent Kelly a picture over the weekend, and it was exactly 2 years ago on like the 5th that we filmed our first Cookies in Christ, but we were doing it in person. And then like we were still trying to flush out like how it was really going to work and like a schedule. Because at that time, I think we were trying to record like 2 episodes in one sitting, and it was really intense. And then trying to edit.
It was in my house.
Yeah.
For like
So
an
it's
hour.
a different vibe. it was a different vibe then, and then we kind of let it settle. And then when we were trying to pick it back up, and then well, before we dropped it, I said, Kelly, why don't we just try to stream separately, you and your house and me and my house? That way we can do it on a constant schedule. And she was like, I don't want to do that. And look at us, COVID made us do it.
Wait a minute. That is not my voice. That's not how I talk.
Kelly was like, I don't want to do that.
so I got deep voices. Anyway, moving forward.
Your voice is deeper than mine, and you talk faster than me sometimes.
I do talk fast. I do. I have my mind go like this.
I just heard that people from New Orleans say a cold soda is a Coca-Cola.
No, a cold drink.
Cold drink. You know what? I thought a cold drink, they was just talking about a daiquiri. I was like, okay. And they was like, no, it's a Coca-Cola. I was like, a Coca-Cola.
It's any soda.
I would have never thought that. It was a spoof. I'm sorry, y'all. This is a tangent. It was a spoof of a guy. The lady went through the drive-thru and was like, can I get a cold drink? He was like, which one? She's like, a cold drink. He said, all of our drinks are cold, man. Which one do you want? And
that is true. She's more than saying that because I'm from New Orleans. I don't know if people know that. So I'm from New Orleans, and yes, we have our own lingo. Yeah. So does we're in DC, Maryland right now, so we say stuff here that nobody else say. Also, like I have to explain Bama and luncheon all the time. So everything is like a mug. I don't even know why. So we're just gonna accept how people speak. But so yeah, about Genesis 29 and 30. I know plenty of people was like, let me just forward. Maybe I should put time slots on the video. But so this is the part. Like, if we can recap real quick. So Jacob, stole the birthright from his brother Esau, with the help of his mother, and deceived his father greatly. His mother, like, your brother coming to get you, you must flee. Go hide out with your uncle. Uncle you ain't never met, but it's my brother. I trust him. I don't know why. He's just like his sister. But he said, go hide with your uncle. So he's looking for his uncle, Laban. I think that's what we're calling him. Laban or Laban. And so he's going to this place, Haran. I think that's what we're going to call that too. And so the part that I'm picking up right now is when he actually gets there and he's kind of looking for his family. It's back in the day, you had no cell phones. There's probably not even no street signs or nothing like that. And he comes upon these gentlemen, and he's wrapping them up and letting them know that, I'm here because I'm looking for my uncle. And they was like, oh, well, there go his daughter right there. Here she come with the flock. And he was like, oh, Rachel, that must be my cousin. So because it's his cousin and he's trying to get to know his uncle, he goes over there. He helps her with the flock.
Nah, you missed a portion.
What? Yeah, and first he helps her with the flock. He said he went over to the well, moved the stone, and then watered his uncle's flock. And then okay, so I looked this up. But so then he kissed her, but it wasn't just regular, he kissed her. I think it was regular kiss. Like, I think it was a regular kiss. I don't think it was a romantic kiss. It was like a custom to kiss because later on his uncle kissed him. So I think that was a custom just to kiss each other. Like, I don't know where it was, but afterwards he wept aloud. Like, he boo-hoo cried. And then he explained to her that he was her cousin and he was looking for her father. So she ran to go tell her father that, Jacob was here. And then Lemon embraced him and was like, oh, flesh of my flesh. Well, not flesh of my flesh, flesh and blood.
No.
And he kissed him too. He kissed him.
She ran and said, Daddy, the stranger just kissed me. Go get him.
So it was a little odd. It was a bit much, especially since when he kissed her, he started crying. So, but I am assuming that the kiss was regular, because at first when I read it, it was like, so you just going to do that to her? But I think a kiss was custom, but the weeping aloud part was not custom. And I think it was just, I don't know how long he traveled. I don't remember if that was the case, but to find somebody in the middle of how you feel and you just left the only family that you really know to finally find your family. I guess it was like, thank the God that I'm trying to get to know. So I'm assuming that's what happened. And I assume the kiss was custom because Laban kissed Jacob when he met him also. So I was like, oh, that must be a thing, like a French, not a French kiss, but like how French be like type of thing. So then it gets into how like Laban is going to show his colors. So Jacob he has this interest in Rachel. He doesn't really tell Laban yet, but he has this interest in Rachel. And he met his other daughter Leah. So Laban has two daughters, Leah and Rachel. Leah is the oldest, Rachel is the younger sister. It says there was no sparkle in Leah's eye, but Rachel had a beautiful figure and a loving face. So he was infatuated with his cousin. I don't want to forget that part. um, but so he said he finally came out and said, I love her. I don't know how love came into, I don't know how long this time has passed, but he said that he loved Rachel and that he wanted to marry her. And he said this to Laban. And so he
Said it after
said,
a month.
what you say?
It was a month.
Oh, 1 month. That's not enough time. But he loved it her. And so he said he wanted to marry her. I guess you know when you know. So the father, Laban, his uncle, agreed. And he was like, instead of that, like, paying a dowry, which I guess is also custom, he would work it off. He was like, I want to pay for her. It is, that sounds weird too, but you gotta remember the times that we're in. He's gonna work 7 years to pay for Rachel. Okay, so that's what happens. He loves her. The love is strong. He feels like she's worth that. That's beautiful. That a man is, I've never heard of that ever before. Working for someone's love. But finally, it came time to marry her. Meaning the 7 years went by, and it went by like this because he was like, he just out on the prize type of thing. And time can go by. The older I get, the more I realize the time is just be like, doop, 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 it slip away. So he is focused, and when you're focused, time goes by, and he's like, I'm ready to marry her, and then we turn the page.
No,
So
he said, "Give me her so I can bed
yeah.
her."
So now we get to that part. He said he fulfilled his agreement. He goes to Lebanon and says, now give me my wife so I can sleep with her. I've been looking at her for 7 years. I haven't touched her. I ain't say nothing. Just I kept my head down and I plowed the fields. Now I'm ready to sow other things. So he, said what he said. Laban invited everybody to the neighborhood and they prepared for a wedding feast. This was also confusing to me, but they prepared for a wedding feast. And that night, when it was dark, obviously it was really dark, Laban had Leah go into Jacob's room and sleep with him. Okay. And it says that he gave his daughter a servant, that's like a congratulations type of situation, I guess. So Jacob wakes up and he's like, what have you done to me? So basically the trickster gets tricked because this is some foolery that's going on right here. So he was enraged. He was real mad. He was big mad. He was upset. He was like, I worked 7 years for Rachel. Like it has an exclamation point in the Bible. Like he's yelling at his uncle at this point. Why have you tricked me? Is what he's asking. And so basically Laban decided to leave out the details of other customs. Like the kiss was a custom. There is a custom there as well where you're supposed to marry the older sister off before the younger sister gets married off. It doesn't mean that they gotta get married to the same guy or anything like that, but the older sister should get married before the younger sister, and Leah's the oldest. He should have told this man that because maybe he would have been okay with that. He probably would have said 7 years for both of them, but he would have probably been okay because he loved Rachel that much. So he probably didn't have to trick this man. But he said, hey, but wait, don't swing on me. I got something in mind. What can happen is you can have Rachel too. Like I promise that if you work another 7 years for me, you can have Rachel. But he will give Rachel, he was going to give Rachel to him now, like after he married Leah. So it's not like he had to wait another 7 years and then get Rachel. It's like you get to have them both now. It's just that you had to marry Leah first. So I guess it wasn't as bad. I mean, another 7 years is bad, but he ended up getting the wife that he wanted. So he agreed. He worked the 7 years. And then like a week later, he slept with Rachel. And to him, she was worth it. So that happened. Okay. So then we go into what's going on as the 7 years is going on. Things are happening because now he's married to two sisters. So when the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, because of course Jacob loved Rachel. Hold on, is it Rachel? Yeah, he loved Rachel. I forget because his mother name started with an R too. I didn't want to mix up him and his mother. So she was unloved. So God and gave her the ability to have children. And so she was conceiving, but Rachel wasn't. So it I'll get into how I felt about that later. But let me just spit out the facts. So she's saying, now my husband will love me. So she had one son. Then she had four sons. Surely this time my husband will feel affection for me. And it kind of broke my heart. But again, we'll talk about the feelings afterwards. I'm just again trying to just give the facts. So she had four sons. And this is when Rachel was like, boo-hoo. Like I haven't gotten pregnant yet at all. She became jealous of her sister. And she was like, give me children or I'm about to die. Like I'm going to die if I don't get kids. And I was like, die though? And so then Jacob, I guess, feeling all this animosity coming off his wife, all this steam, he goes back at her and was like, do I look like God to you? Like, am I God? Is what he says to her. He's the one who's keeping you from having children. Go talk to God and this, that, and the other. So Rachel decides to pull a Sarah and was like, take my maid and have relations with her, and then through my maid I will feel like I had a child also. It don't get no closer than your sister's children, but okay. It's her maid ownership thing. Okay, so that's how she wants to have children. Jacob, I guess, of course, agrees, and he sleeps with his wife's maiden, and the maid becomes pregnant. So now and gives him two more sons. So he got the four sons with his wife Leah, and through the maiden of his wife Rachel, he has two more sons. Okay, so Rachel was like, and we say this in the DMV since we were talking about slang earlier. She was like, I'm winning. And so it becomes like this competition to her. She feel like, even though she only got 2 against 4, I don't know how she feel like she winning, but she's like, I have the sons, the children I wanted. I feel cool. I feel good with this. So it becomes like a game to them. And so then Leah gets Leah. Hold on, is Leah stopped having children yet? I
She
think Leah is not having children now. So her son Reuben, which we will learn about Reuben and Simeon and Levi later. Poor Joseph. At the time, poor Joseph. It ends up being good for him too. But Reuben, who is the oldest, this is the first son ever. Reuben, right? Is Reuben the first son? Her first son, Reuben. Yes. So the first son, he comes in with some mandrakes, which are a type of fruit, I believe. And like Rachel is begging for this fruit. And so Leah pops off. She angry. She like, you already took my husband. Now you want to take my son fruit? So I was like, goodness gracious. And so I'm thinking that Rachel never asked for this life, and all the woman want is some fruit. Surely, like, okay. So no, it doesn't. It's not that simple for them. So you know how Rachel pulled a Sarah, then Leah decides to pull a Jacob, kind of like they exchange food for this favor that she wants. So she was like, you know what? I'm gonna let you sleep with Jacob, um, if you give me the fruit. So Rachel is like, Rachel and Leah are bargaining this time, this sexual time with their husband, in exchange. And I think that kind of cheapens him in their mind. But we're gonna, go forward. So so Leah goes out to the field and was like, I paid for you for the night with some fruit. So you guys sleep with me. And he's like, oh, all right. So he sleeps with her, and she considers this God's favor because she gets pregnant again. And so she was like, now my husband's gonna treat me with respect. I don't know how much respect you in you think you're gonna receive from somebody if you saying I had to pay for your time with you. And they treating them like an escort. So after this, she gave birth to a daughter who doesn't get a lot of time in the Bible, but she does have a significant role that I think is interesting. But there's one daughter, Dinah. So I believe this is the last child, right?
No.
I think this
Then,
is the last. That's her last child. That's Leah's last child. Is Dinah. So
mhm.
it ends with the girl. Um, so God remembered. So this is what the Bible said. God remembered Rachel's plight, and He answered her prayers and enabled her to have children. So she had Joseph. Okay. I was kind of stuck on the word remember, but again, we're gonna push forward until we get to the part about just how we feel. So soon after giving birth, Jacob asked Laban, like, please release me. Like, can I go now? I worked 7 years. I did what I was supposed to do. I got both your daughters. I got a couple kids. We got the servants. I worked really hard for you. I made you a wealthy man. You know, you've been really blessed. Can I leave? Laban is like, please listen to me. I was wealthy because of you. It's whatever. I'll pay whatever. And I underline whatever because I already know that he's a trickster. So I said, really? And then we find out later on. So he's saying, okay, so what are the terms? You know, and Jacob is basically saying, I just want one thing. He basically wants the flock, not the whole flock, but he specifically asked for like the spotted flock and the black. I think is it sheep or sheep. So we want the black sheep and the speckled and spotted goats. All right. So Laban says, okay. However, later on that day, he gave these exact animals to his sons instead. And I was confused. I was like, if they going on a 3-day journey, does that mean they coming back or what? But it says he placed them in the care of his own sons, who took them on a 3-day journey from where Jacob was. To me, that means away, because then it says that Jacob stayed and cared for Laban's flock. But again, we'll get into it a little bit deeper. And so what Jacob did was it wasn't witchcraft or anything. It seemed like it was like a really good drink that he concocted, but he ended up breaking branches and doing a whole bunch of stuff to make this like this thing that the flock could consume. And from consuming what he had made from these ingredients, the ones that were left ended up having the spots and becoming the black sheep and things like all that he wanted them to be in order to signify that he had his flock and Laban had his flock. So um, he kind of from this built this flock of really really good sheep and goats. They were strong, and the weak ones he just left them alone, and they ended up being Laban's flock. And it kind of ends there as Jacob becoming really wealthy because of the stock that he has, and Laban having the weaker ones. And this is, you know, before he's able to leave. The next chapters will talk about that flight, and I have some notes for that also. But that is a wrap up of 29 and 30 so far. What I have, I have mad notes because there's a lot of things that was going on in this little bit of time. I mean, the time is about 14 years, 14 plus years have gone by. But well, 14 years, when it says 7 years, he had already been working for him for free for a whole month. I would like to just throw that out there. He was working for free for a month, and then 7 years started, and then another 7 years was taxed onto that. And I don't know how long negotiations took because a whole bunch of sheep and goat were born in the time frame before he let the man loose. So I'm just going to round that to 20 years. So in this time of 20 years, a lot has happened. So if we go back to 29, we can start going over notes. Morgan, what say you?
Do, 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 do.
I'm gonna eat a cookie. I actually did have a cookie.
I have cookies today too. All right. First note. Imagine being kissed by somebody you don't know, and then they say, "I'm your cousin." Like, that's a shock to me. But I mean, I do get that it's still customary. But even with customs, like, I personally don't even like people extending the hug if I'm not too familiar with you. Like, that's just not my thing personally. Um,
I think hugs are dead. People are not really hugging right now.
I mean, I'm
Hopefully
just
they
saying,
come back.
like, pre-COVID or anything else, like, so many things are really dead. We'll talk about that, like bowling. We all used to stick our hands in the same holes.
I did not. I mean, I stuck my hand in the hole, but I ain't eat them wings. I ain't eat the wings. I had to go
Oh,
wash my hands. Anything at the bowling alley, I was not eating until I washed my hands, and then I gave other people my turn. I'm either going to eat or I'm going to bowl.
I'm just talking about just bowling in general. Like,
Well, yeah, that it was.
yeah,
It's a lot of stuff. Blowing out candles. Thing of the past.
that didn't phase me because I don't eat cake. But anyway, yeah. So that was really interesting to me. Just I guess the openness or the trust, because how do you really know this is who they say they are? Like, I'm assuming that they aren't too familiar with each other. I don't know how many times they've had family reunions, maybe often. But that was
I don't think you them.
um Genesis 29:14. Laban said, "You really are my own flesh and blood." And that was after um Jacob had told Laban like his story. And so I want to know, did he tell him like the full story? Like, yeah, kind of like bragging, like I, tricked my brother, and then mom sent me out here, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air style. Got got one little girl, right? My mom got scared, so you moving with your auntie in her room.
That is very true. Great reference.
So
That's what happened in the show.
but yeah, he said, "You really are of my own flesh and blood." And I wonder if that is like a precursor to, "Oh, I'm a swindler too." That sounds like something I would do. Or is it more so of just the, "Oh, you my sister's boy. I love you." Like you, what's it say? You my
That's,
uncle
that's
boy,
it.
air boy. Like,
That is interesting when he's like, "Oh, you really are related," because I could see me doing something like that had I had a brother.
um,
Okay, I like that. That's
my next
interesting.
note, when Laban gave Uh, Leah to Jacob. I do know this is dark time. I know there's a different time. How dark was this tent? And even so, within the tent, no, no,
It
no.
was dark.
Within the tent, y'all. I mean, I'm not just going at it with a stranger. We at least gonna have a little cordial conversation. Like, he couldn't tell the voice. Like,
Like he should have been like, "I've been waiting all day. I mean, like 7 years to be with you. I love you." And this, what she hit him with the
let
mm-hmm.
me stare in your
Wait,
bright eyes for a minute. Like, you couldn't see the bright to her eyes and tell them those wasn't Rachel's eyes. You said they was bright.
and when you caressing the body, you already, because to me, if you have been infatuated with this woman for 7 years, you done already studied her everything. You know what she smelled like, you know what she looked like, everything but taste. Like you know that if I'm not gonna assume that maybe Leah was like this, or maybe Leah was like this. But you know, if Rachel was like this, or whatever his preference was, like maybe his preference was a nice full figured woman. And then Leah is straight up and down. You already know that's like, where the meat.
I don't see how was swindled in that manner. Also, I did also question. He had the conversation. Hey, I'm working for Rachel, but did they tell Rachel and Leah that that was the deal?
That's what I said. I said when she got mad at her sister, I was like, she didn't even ask for this. She didn't. I don't remember her saying, "Oh yeah, I'm down with the cause. I like him too."
Yeah, and so because I would have been like, "Dad, no, like help me find my own husband. He working for Rachel. Like I'm not gonna marry him, or
In the 7 years, you couldn't find her nobody. Did you try?
He did.
He could have said, okay, so I got a deal for 7 years for my daughter. In the meantime, Leah, you got 7 years, else I'm gonna have to do what it do. You already know how your
Oh,
father is. I'm
Leah
gonna have
was the Esau of Lebanon's family. She might have been a
what
little,
was
I don't know. Anyway, so
that? Okay, you think she was Harry?
I don't know. I did question, because after he gave him, well, after he's like, "Give me my wife," they didn't say they got married. They said they prepared a wedding feast, and then he gave her Leah, and then he
That's
said
what
the next week he slept with Rachel. So is that what technically classifies marriage in this time? Like it wasn't like a full
I didn't know.
oath or
I
anything.
put that in there too because I was like, they had a wedding feast, and then he slept with her. So I was like, where was the wedding? So I don't know. I don't know if sleeping with somebody makes it a wedding because it's not like it mentions a wedding with Rachel either. It's like he married Leah, but see, it says a week after Jacob married Leah, he slept with Rachel too
Yeah,
and loved her much more than Leah. So I'm guessing, what is it? Consummate
yeah,
marriage?
consummate because that's grounds for divorce in some religions. Like if you don't consummate a marriage, you can get a divorce, and it'll be like it's annulled and it never happened. Like
Okay.
Orthodox.
Yeah. See, and that might be a lesson right there. When you too thirsty, when you just too eager, you didn't even check the balance, like you didn't do what you were supposed to do to make sure that this was the blessing that God really intended for you to have. Like you just like, oh, it's been 7 years. I'm so excited. I don't care how dark it is. I know this don't feel like her, but it must be her. Like I'm just gonna ignore all the things that my senses are trying to tell me. You don't smell like Rachel. It don't look like Rachel because you still can see a silhouette. The moon will provide light. Like
Hello.
nothing, nothing nothing was of Rachel, and still he was like, still must be her because you thirsty. And so when you sitting there and you're like, this plan gotta work, or this relationship gotta work, or this job gotta work, and you're trying to force it, or you're just so excited about it and so eager about it, and it's not really ever was intended for you, and then you're stuck with it. And that's unfortunate that we're talking about a person because I just felt so bad for Leah. And I felt worse when she started to become a mom, but um, it was just I don't agree with Levin at all. Like that was messed up. Like it because I feel like if you would have told him this is the custom, you know what? If he had told him, he probably would have got his boy to be like, can you do me a solid? He already do deals. So I already owe this man 7 years, but I will owe you two if you take Leah, since obviously Leah got to be married
What
first.
friend? He had no friends.
He should have took the time to make some friends. Like he could have. The man at the well, wasn't some men at the well? They probably could have did a little.
The men have already lived in the tent for how long? If they wasn't about to step up for Leah, they wasn't going to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I just feel like if Levin would have gave him the information, and sometimes we do that too. We just assume somebody's going to say no, or we just assume that it's not going to go our way, so we feel like we gotta cheat or scrape and swindle and just do something that we shouldn't have done in order to get our way when simply exposing or telling more information or the truth would have been easier, and if it was really for you then it would have came anyway. So he could have very well been like, oh yeah, I'm cool with that, I'll take Leah. I ain't gonna love her, but I'll take her if that's what it means. But he probably would have had other conditions. He probably wouldn't have been like 7 for the 14 for both of them. He probably just been like 7 for both because you already know I'm taking her off your hands at this point. And again, that's because we're talking about a person.
Um,
But
yeah.
yeah,
So
but apparently Rachel was worth it because he was like, I'm about to do another 7.
anything for Rachel. Genesis 29:31. I found it very, very interesting that God, made Leah so fertile and Rachel sterile because Jacob didn't love her, as a husband should love and care for a wife. So I found that it's like a lesson about taking care of love and loving every blessing that, you know, God has given you, even if it doesn't look exactly how you want it, but it still deserves care because it is considered a blessing and it can be taken away from you at any moment until while you are working for the thing that you really want or, you know, are having or appreciating. So not just taking things, but not taking things for granted. And I also had a note that sometimes you, even when it feels like you're in the like a messed up situation, God still has your back and you don't necessarily have to respond to anything because Leah didn't have to do anything to Rachel. I mean, yeah, Leah didn't have to do anything to Rachel. God already did it. She was miserable. Her husband didn't love her, but she was able to have children, something that Rachel loved and like, you know, well, Rachel craved and loathed about Leah that she couldn't do that one thing. So it was like, you don't have Leah didn't have to be mean to her sister, even though she was, because God had already taken care of it on her behalf.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of hard though because you can assume that he was with Rachel more than he was with Leah. So you had four sons. He only had sex with you
No, no, no,
four
I
times.
know God, not Jacob.
Oh, okay.
It-
No, well, okay. So from the point of God provided love, well, provided children for her, because she was unloved. To me, that shows a significance between a mother and child. But it also made me think about how women take that love and then assume that a guy will have those same exact attachments. And sometimes women go and say, I'm gonna have this baby with him because I want to keep him. That's totally different than the situation. That's not what you do to keep somebody, and it's not what you do to make them love you, and it's not what you do to feel love. Some people go and have children because they feel like no one else loves them in the world. But if you don't love you first, sometimes you're not able to give love to that other person. So the very child that you wanted to love you can't because you haven't loved it either. It's just a really deep wound when you don't feel loved. But to seek any other love other than God's love first really has you at a disadvantage. But I did want to like point that out. Like women, we definitely shouldn't use children in that way, especially since men sometimes don't have that type of attachment. Like they will leave their young. I mean, women have done the same thing. And I wanted to say that as well. Like women can detach feelings from their children as well. But I just found this so sad that like I've never had that type of rejection. To already know that your father had to do this in order for you to get married, even though it was custom, he could have went about it in a way that was more in your favor and more upright, than to just be like, here, take her. You ain't even pay for her. You paid for. He basically, it wasn't like he paid for Leah at all. It's like he paid for Rachel for 14 years. That's really what it was.
I mean, yeah, but to me, because of how she pushed off at Rachel, like you already stole my husband, I don't think that she knew. I think she legitimately believed that Jacob worked 7 years for her. And then he was like, oh, I'm gonna throw Leah in. I mean, throw Rachel in too. No, sis, you was the Hail Mary, not
He was the extra.
yeah. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I can assume that they're not communicating it to these women. Women were not put in a position to be in the know at times. Like we weren't the ones that they was like, let me run this by my wife real quick. That just wasn't the thing. So they didn't really value the opinion or the body or the anything of a woman as much as we do now. And as far as like Rachel getting jealous, I don't know why she wasn't. I don't know if it was like God withheld her children in order for her to have children because she was already not getting loved while Rachel was getting loved by her husband. Even though knowing that that was the love that she sought after. So it wasn't like, oh, I want children, I want children. So would it have been, and I'm not questioning God, I'm just saying like from the perspective of if this is what somebody is asking for, this person wants children, this person wants the attention of her husband, but they both get the opposite of what they both want. Or is it because they were blessed in these ways? Sometimes we're blessed and we don't even pay attention to the blessing because we paying attention to what somebody else got. So I don't know which one of those it was, but I'm gonna assume that it was God blessed them in the way that He saw fit, which was Leah, children, Rachel, husband, attention, because they both got a husband, but attention to husband. And they were so focused on what the other person had that they didn't really focus on what they themselves had, or just consume them, and to the point where it became a game and a competition. I felt it was for her to yell out, "I'm winning," and that's just a term we use now. I don't think we got it from Rachel, but like, you only win at something that you feel competitive in, and you shouldn't be competing to have who can have the most children. That's something odd to compete about.
So I mean, I don't think it was a competition to see who can have the most children because clearly she did not have the most children. It was I'm winning in terms of I have the husband's love and affection, and I was able to fulfill my wifely duties and birth him a child. Whereas before, that was the missing piece. If Leah would have never been able to bear children, I feel like he Jacob may have laid with her like a couple times, and then after she was deemed infertile, he probably wouldn't have given her any type of attention at all. But because she was able to constantly produce heirs, that gave her a little bit of levity with him, a little bit of balance.
Value.
Yeah, a little bit of value, at least in that respect. Um, One thing that you didn't, I think you skipped because you just going through it so fast because it was a hot mess. But at one point, Leah did stop having children, so she thought she was done having children. And since Rachel gave her maid to Jacob, Leah then gave her maid
Mhm.
to Jacob to get more children. And then Leah, after the whole Mandrake swap, Leah ended up getting pregnant again with Dinah. And then after all that is when Rachel finally gave birth to Joseph. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was an interesting.
Like, let me count this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Well, the 13th one didn't happen yet, but 12 children came from this fiasco.
Amen.
And we're hoping that like they're all up.
I did have a comment in Genesis 32. Jacob clapped back and was like, "Am I God?" Like, that one
That's
made
what
me mad.
I'm saying. My God.
Listen, that's all him, bro. Take it up with the man upstairs. I'm doing
But
my.
before that happened,
He was like, "It's
I
a
think
me."
it's about me, literally. But it's for her to say, "Or I'll die." It's like you almost sound. She sound really spoiled. One, um, but like it's that significant. Like I am a mom, but I'm a mom that was told that I couldn't be a mom. So I understand. Like, oh, if I can't have children, I almost feel like I don't have a purpose, or I don't have the purpose that I thought I would have, or I'm less of a woman. And a lot of people definitely feel like this because they're like, I had one job, but that's not the one job that you have. That's one capability that women are able to do. But we have many other purposes. And again, sometimes when we don't get that one thing, we ignore all the other things that were great and all the other things that God has blessed us with. And for her to be like, I'm jealous of her. You mean the one that don't get no kisses, no hugs, no praises, no flowers? He basically go in there, do his business, and leave. You jealous of her. You're jealous of the fact that she's able to have kids and you haven't had kids yet. But I don't know how many years went by. It wasn't 7. Like, it ain't like you was there and barren for a long time. I don't know what a long time would be. It could be 1 year to some people. Like, I want to get married, and if I don't have kids in a year, we going to the doctor and we getting these shots and we doing this, that, and the other. Not really giving enough time. But I can't be the one to say how much time is enough time. But it is hard to see someone else having children back to back consistently, and you're not able to. I know neighbors do that. When you see, you see the little sign out there that says expecting, and the baby showers keep coming and you keep getting invited to the wedding, like, things like that. When that keeps happening, it does remind you each time that I'm not able to do that, or I'm not married yet, or whatever the case may be that you are longing for, that somebody else is happening. But to be that furious and jealous, I'm
What
going to die.
I disagree for that time in that century, that time frame, because at that time frame, we've already said women don't really have a say. They aren't valued. They don't have anything to do but produce children and, be heads or subheads of household. Like they don't have anything. So yes, that is your duty to get married. I'm going to marry you off. You're going to bring wealth to the family by whoever I can trade you off for, and you need to produce them heirs. That was her job. That was their training. So I can see how, especially how Laban treated them. I'm pretty sure
She was no. Rachel was a
yeah,
shepherd.
she was a shepherd. But once she became a wife, she was not shepherding anymore.
How you know? She could have been shepherding some sheep. She was knowledgeable enough to shepherd the sheep. She don't just need to stop all of a sudden, especially you ain't got no kids, shepherd the sheep. Like she could have been out there doing that.
Why am I working and you working?
Because I ain't working. So let me do something.
Yeah, I don't even know how she became a shepherd. I guess that was a Hail Mary pass.
She was the younger sister and was a shepherd. So I mean, either Levin was that grimy that he put his daughters to work too, because he had sons, or she was different and had this value in her. But either way, I do understand what you're saying. Like that is usually the premise of what a wife, woman is. This is, you had one job at that time, but this woman also was a shepherd, so she was knowledgeable and capable of doing other things. Not that it would have brought him any joy because he was already working. He's like, you gonna help this 7 years go by faster? Because if not, go back home and just wait and do whatever you got to, drink some berries or whatever it is that needs that. Ask your sister how she doing it. So I guess I don't know.
So I'm saying she was no longer a shepherd. She had a maid. She had a maiden. She ain't shepherding. She's sitting there waiting for Jacob to come home so he can try to make the babies. That's what she was doing.
Maybe she helping her sister with the baby. So I'm thinking that Sarah wasn't crazy. This must have been a custom also, because here we have Rachel doing the same thing that we call shenanigans, but it might be a custom to have your maid sleep with your husband if you're not able to, don't want to, can't no more, whatever the case may be, or you just want to speed walk this process. So having her maid sleep with him must be a custom type of thing. Does not mean that all customs are right. You don't have to do it. Just like you ain't have to kiss her, you ain't have to marry the oldest, you ain't have to have your maid sleep with your husband. And I'm just wondering, after all of this, Jacob is like, oh, what happened to Morgan? Well, I will continue. I'm wondering, like, after all, how you hear? I can hear your voice. Nah, it's not there. It's not able. Hang up and come back. It happened on the thing live stream too. Oh, I guess I should stop talking and wait for Morgan to come. What can we do in the meantime? Since Morgan is not here to stop me from saying whatever I want to say. But I was about, I don't forgot what I was about to talk about. I was talking about how Sarah started, no, yeah, the custom. That's what I was talking about. Okay, well, we're going to wait. I don't know where Morgan is. If not, then I definitely will continue on without said Morgan. I think I'll continue without Morgan, and I'll just, if she comes in, then I'll just reiterate it so she can hear it. So at this time, so I was saying that it's a custom to have your maid sleep with your husband, but that does not mean that we need to follow every custom. Okay, like you have choices, and there are certain customs that we have nowadays. Oh, here goes Morgan. Hey, welcome back. I don't know what happened, but I was saying, like, you don't have to follow every custom that happens in your culture. I know that some cultures do the it's not castration, it's circumcision of women, because they feel like women shouldn't have pleasure during intercourse. That's not a custom that many women may agree with. You don't have to do it just because it's a custom. Some customs are to get tattoos or A rite of passage for a young man might be to go out and hunt with his grandfather. If you in your heart are not the one to go and hunt and kill a deer or a dove or whatever the case may be, quail, then you can break certain customs that you don't agree with, especially if they don't align with your faith. Um, to my knowledge, at this time, having multiple people sleep with your husband is not a good thing. So she could have denied that custom and waited for God to bless her in the way that she has been praying or hoping for him to do so. Um, so hopefully we learn from her situation. Um, do you have anything to say about her Sarah moment or anything like that? Or do you want to go on to we get into the fruit lentils? They didn't exchange the instead of lentil soup, it is now I think mandrakes are a fruit. I didn't really it just seemed like a fruit, right?
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Talked about the clapback. Yeah. Yeah. I think. I mean, I don't think much about it. They obviously. I'm not gonna say they don't care much for Jacob. I think they do. I think this is just another case of sibling rivalry, which is why I don't know. Up until this point, it's just a long-standing promotion for only having one kid. Because apparently, when you have more than one, they be wild. Every time it's some siblings, they is tripping.
I'm an only child. It is very hard to be an only child as a
I was
kid. It
raised
is
an only child.
wonderful when you go to college. Like being an only child in college, you good. It's wonderful all the way up until depending on your spouse, you have kids and the lack of cousins are there. But then I'm thinking, like, since I'm in my 30s and my parents are in their 50s, that it will start to get a little harder when they get older. So being an only child is like, oh, it's not that fun when I'm a kid. It's wonderful 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and then when your parents start to get older, it's like, wow, I'm the only one who can help them right now. So that's a little hard, but that could very well be your situation if you have 10 siblings and they just no good.
I was
So
about to say, I know people who have multiple siblings and they're the baby and they're the one who does the most for both of their parents. So I don't really think that matters. I mean, it matters, but even still, I'm pretty sure in these cases where they had multiple children, it was probably the responsibility of the eldest son to take care of their parents, no matter what the situation was. Or
whole time I'm talking, I'm like, I married the oldest son. I'm prepared. I love my in-laws. Like I have given a lot of thanks to God for that because it's genuine. Like I really love my in-laws, and a lot of people are like, that's not the case for them. But the whole like again, we relate um Rachel to Esau when she says, I will let Jacob sleep with you tonight if you give me some mandrakes, because Esau did the same thing to not Isaac, to Jacob. Well, Jacob did the same thing to Esau, I'm sorry, where he's like, if you give me your birthright, then I'll give you the lentil soup. Instead of just giving the sibling what you want, it's just simple foods. I don't know what this thing is about food in this family, but they'll do anything for a Klondike bar in this joint. Like they just, what would you do for this food? And they go to the extreme. Like you didn't have to. When they say, what would you do for a Klondike bar? Some people be like, oh, I'll do a backflip. And you be like, I'll marry whoever. What? Like, that's not what I was thinking that you would say.
But and honestly, like that wasn't that big of a deal. Basically, she was like, I'll trade you this fruit to swap nights with you because he was already banging them both. So it wasn't like this was the first occurrence that she was like, let me get your husband and you can have some of my fruit. She was like, let me have him tonight. All right, bet you was gonna get him tomorrow. Cool. Now
I
I
don't know. No, I don't know what the arrangement is. Maybe he stopped sleeping with her. Like that's what I'm saying. Like it only takes one occurrence to have kids. Like for all we know, he slept with Leah 6 times. Like we don't know if this was a every Tuesday. It could be like I'm gonna have intercourse with you when I feel like I'm ready to have another child. Other than that, I'm not giving you no love. And if that's the case, she know her sister. You might be hungry for this fruit, but you know your sister is hungry for that intimate love where she only is going to have him to her. Like when you're intimate with somebody, you would hope in your mind, I'm the only thing they're thinking about at this time. I have their undivided attention. That is something that you long for, well, that she longs for. And for her to maybe not get that on a regular basis or once a month or whatever the case may be, I don't know what her fancy is. She jumped and leaped at the opportunity, but it also cheapens him to me. I know that if I found out that even my kids would be like, hey, I'll swap my hug with mom for the night if you give me a cookie. And when I go to hug my children good night, I get to my son, he'd be like, oh, no, just give my hug to Eden. She gave me a cookie today. My hug is one cookie? Like,
well,
why would you treating me to this cookie? Like, I would feel some kind of way. But I feel like to me, it's a sign of like kind of disrespect and like a less value for the time that she has with her husband. Like, and that could be so. We don't really get to learn what Rachel's intentions are towards her husband. Like, does she love him like he love her? I don't know. It never explains it
no.
as in the Bible. Like I haven't really read that she's infatuated with him and so in love with him and this, that, and the other. It's like her focus is her sister. So
You have to think. I would say that this has been long-standing sibling rivalry. It's a competition between them. Jacob gone all day.
separate them. Levin knew what kind of daughters he had. He should have separated them. It was like,
No,
look, you go to the east, you go to the west.
Jacob gone all day, tended to the flocks. They on campus, or I mean, say campus. They back at home tormenting each other all day. Just being just catty. So I wasn't that offended. I mean, I don't know how Jacob felt being traded for some fruit, but he already working 7 years for Rachel. What's some fruit?
But how is he gonna honor it? Like I paid for you with some mandrakes that I found, but that my son found, not our son, my son. That he found on top. It ain't like he worked for them joints. He found them. So that I can sleep with you. And he was like, and the Bible says, so that night he slept with Leah. Like, you just gonna take her word, you just gonna do it? Because he's a man. He could have been like, oh, well, I don't know what kind of deal y'all had. Did you give her the fruit yet? Because you better go get it. Because I'm not sleeping with you because I don't want to, or I'm not sleeping with you because I don't want any more kids at this point, or whatever the case may be. But he ends up sleeping with her, and they do have a child. Um, is it a child or two children at this point? I think she has three more children with him, and the last one being her son. I mean, her daughter, the only daughter that he has, which he also treats terribly. Him and all her brothers. Like it's just we gonna get to Dinah later. She has one small incy wincy part in this whole book, but I think it's very significant. Um, and this part on 22, the word remembered had me so confused because I'm like, when you say somebody remembered something, it to me conveys that once upon a time they had forgotten. But I don't want to believe that God forgot about Rachel's hurt and how she felt. But what did you take remembered as? Like it wasn't.
Now I don't take it as forgot. I took it as not at the top of his priority list. Like he was like, she good. She got a man that worship her. And I'm about to go over here, and I mean, I don't know what else
Okay.
was happening in the world at that time. But let's just say something else was happening over in Egypt, whatever. I'm be over here and be like, oh yeah, let me go ahead and unplug Rachel's uterus right quick.
Unplug.
Or you could think of it as like the mail. So she sent it up the prayers, and he was going through the prayers, and he opened up her letter. Oh yeah, I ain't
But
fixed
oh yeah, still means I forgot. Like, oh yeah, it's like now I remembered. Like as
no,
in
because
I
like, all right, it's like, so I know you have kids, but every day I talk to you, I don't think Kelly is a mom, Kelly has children, Kelly's children are X, Y, and Z until I bring it to, my forefront, my temporal lobe. And I'm like, yeah, Kelly got 3 kids and they, a year apart and that this is and this. So I know it. I didn't forget it. It's just not here. It's here.
okay, I can take that. I mean, and our study Bible says eventually God answered her prayers, but I didn't want to leave out my initial thoughts because everybody don't have our study Bible.
Mm.
So when you're just reading it, and I strongly advise you to get a study Bible. Doesn't have to be the same one that we use, but the one that we use is linked below in the YouTube description, and it's the one that I like the most. But there are a lot of study Bibles out there that can help you. And then even if it's not a study Bible, like just go and research to see what commentary is out there about a certain scripture. But I didn't want to not convey what first popped into my head because I can assume anybody that heard the word remember would be like, he forgot about her. So it wasn't forget. It was like an eventually. It was always there. It's just like, okay, now is the time to now bless her in that way. So because we don't want to ever, like, once you open that possibility of forget, people place that on their situation, like, has God forgotten about me? And that's a lot of people's question. Like, if for some reason we don't take into consideration like stuff like this was like a 20-year situation almost, 400 years for others in the Bible, like stuff happened for them, it takes years, decades, and we'll say something like, oh, my check ain't clear yet, has God forgotten about me, type of thing. Not that that's not significant to you, I understand that that's important to you, but eventually the check will clear if the money is there, of course. But I'm trying to share that we don't take God's time into consideration. Like, it's whenever he thinks, and we don't want to assume that he forgot, because that's a place where the devil likes to play, is in our doubt of God's capability and what he has for us. So we don't ever want to do that.
Yeah. The note that I have for that, it just says, after all these years and all this mess, God finally answered Rachel's prayer of having children. And it's just a reminder that God always comes through, even when we create messes for ourselves by not being patient. So essentially, Rachel was punished because Jacob didn't love Leah. And sometimes we inherit curses or punishments that are not from our own undoing, but from others. And at the end of the day, there always be glory to God because he can change any situation around. I mean, who would have thought that, after 7 years and my sister having all these kids, my servant having kids, her servant having kids, and now you finally bless me with my one and only, you see, Rachel did it right though. She had one.
In the beginning. But
Like
at this time, there's one, and
she
then
was
like
like, yeah,
30 years later.
after all this fighting with me and my sibling, I ain't gonna have nah, we cool. But yeah, that's just a joke, y'all. No, just my siblings. Um, but yeah, I did think that was something interesting to note that he did come through for her, and it wasn't on her time. Again, we don't know how long she waited. Like Sarah waited forever.
Yeah.
Sarah waited hundreds of years. But to me, Rachel waited, I say she might have waited a good 5. And that's only
and, and
because
it can feel that's a long time for some people.
yeah,
Like,
if I just
I
say, all
want
right,
to do
five
I want to
years
do I
compared
want to have
to
baby.
100 years, that's like you ain't built this. We not built the same, sis.
That's always what the older generation be like. You don't know nothing about such and such.
Yeah,
A little 5, you can't do 5. Try 55.
exactly.
Try 5 times 20. Like, so. I think that it was interesting to me that in that same sentence he said he answered her prayers, but we never know that she prayed. Um, and
Yes,
that just
because Jacob said, "Talk to God."
that doesn't mean that she did it. It didn't then say, so then she said, it says, then Rachel told him, take my maid. It didn't say, then Rachel went and prayed to God. But she does say, God has vindicated me. But again, that doesn't mean that she went and I mean, so I'm just saying, like, this is going to be a little iffy to say because it can open Pandora's box from what people say of Pandora's box. But everything is not stated when we think it should have been stated in the Bible. So no, it doesn't say, and then she went and prayed to God, and then she said, take my maiden's hand. But we know that it happens because it's stated. So I say that lightly because I don't want you to think like, oh, well, then there must be other stuff that's not said in the Bible that should have happened. You see that it is stated eventually. So I'm just saying it doesn't happen when we think it happened or when we thought it should have been stated, but it is stated eventually that that's what happened. And I think that that's interesting because I was like, dang, she ain't say nothing to God. She just, you should go pray to God. How about you just take this maid? Like that's what I thought happened until you get to that part and then say, oh, she did pray to God.
So to me, it's just another nod at the lack of value that women have at that point in time, because I feel like if she was a man, like the main character, or if we were even talking about, and then Jacob prayed, it would have said it. You know what I'm saying? And then it would have said, and then Jacob's prayers were answered. But because she's not a man, and she's not really, she is a main, but she's not the main. Um, that I don't think that it gives that many details as far as like the role that women have in their relationship with God during this time. Because we often question, like, Sarah ain't go talk to God about some things, you know what I'm saying? It's just questioning. But we know that at one point in time, angels did appear to Sarah and was like, you finna have a baby. And she laughed. So I think that there is a lot of missing information in terms of the role that women can potentially have, or the relationship that women potentially have with God in the Bible during this time. After that whole Eve situation, they was like, oh, y'all don't even get to speak to God.
Corinthians. But in Corinthians, they told the women not to speak because they was doing the most.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, it could be that. It could be not.
That's just
But
how I
I
like it.
love that it does eventually say that she had a conversation with God and He blessed her. Not that God can't bless you if you don't speak to Him. But I just thought that was nice that it says that He answered her prayers and enabled her to have children. So I was like, yay, go ahead, Rachel. And this was despite the fact that she did a whole bunch of stuff. Like, and again, reaffirming that no matter where you are in life, God can still bless you. God can still turn your situation around. They kind of left it at that mother. Look, I'm looking because in our Bible, there's a timeline chart that shows not only all of God's children, I mean, not God's children, all of Jacob's children, but like when they happen. So you can see like there's no overlapping. Well, yeah, there's no overlapping of the kids. Like there's the four from Leah, and then Rachel's servant has two, and then Leah's servant has two, then
What?
Leah has three, and then Rachel has Joseph.
Who paid you on?
61. So where those little lines happen, that's pretty much when the kids happened. And you can see the same timeline that they speak of. And so it doesn't like make it look like
But that's
everybody.
not true, because Rachel's servants had their children before Rachel had Joseph.
Yeah, that's why Joseph is all the way at the end. Like I'm saying, like not it's not
Oh,
in
you mean
order
the
from
length
top.
from,
It's not
okay. Yeah,
it's
okay.
going
Yeah.
horizontal. Yeah, horizontal lines, not the which kind of line.
Yeah, so that's why I said about 5 years. It's actually longer than that, because count how many kids happened before she had Joseph.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
You know how long it take to make a baby?
And with none of them overlapping, 11. Yeah, she waited a good little minute. all the while. So that also helps us understand how long my man Jacob was under the thumb of his father-in-law, who was also said uncle. And when we get into 30, and he's like, look, man, he worked the 7 years plus some, unless some of these kids came out together.
That's what I was about to say. I think that they might not have come out together, but they probably came out like the same year, because if you look at Dan and Judah, they mad close.
Yeah.
So I feel like,
I mean, and Dan was the first of Rachel's children.
yeah,
So yeah, so
that
Judah
fourth
could
one,
have been born, and then
yeah, that fourth time that Leah was like,
I
oh,
mean, even if you count them together, let's just take Leah's children. That's still more than seven. I mean, well, more than 7 years that he has been waiting to be released from his uncle. Is all I'm saying, is that I know it was more than 7 years that this man didn't work. And then I'm going to count that 1 month in the beginning that he worked before the 7 years started. He basically was like, oh, it's not our custom to have you out here working and not being paid. You should be paid. And he, for about a month. That's what it says. He stayed and worked for his uncle for about a month. And then he said, you shouldn't work with me without pay because we are relatives. So 7 years and about a month. And then 7+ years after that. It's just, that's a lot. That's a lot of that man's life. I mean, he was able to have a whole bunch of fun with a whole bunch of women. But in the meantime, he was working really, really hard for his uncle. And I thought it was interesting that he's like, please release me. Like, I don't understand why you need this permission. Like, I fulfilled. Yeah, I don't know where you went. I fulfilled. Hold on, let me see. Oh, there you go. Maybe it's the connection. I don't know. Hold on, but so he was like, I fulfilled. Like, he been fulfilled. We already did the math. He been fulfilled his obligation. Why do you need to say, please release me? Like, it would have been like, hey, on March the 3rd.
I guess maybe he was waiting for Laban to come to him and be like, all right, you done. And he was like, all right, this man ain't come to me and said we good. So let me just, you know.
You have a echo. It's like crazy. Hold on. All right, speak.
Hello?
Hold on. Speak again.
Hello?
Like, say a sentence.
Say a sentence.
Okay, so now you're not echoing, but
It's a delay.
no, it's not a delay. It's just not a. It's not a sweet sounding voice. But we shall proceed.
What about this?
Yeah, that's fine.
Hmm.
All right. So why do you think they said please release me?
Yeah, I think maybe I I'm torn. I don't know. I would say maybe because he didn't, like, yes, it was a verbal agreement. And yeah, it was 7 years. Maybe they count set. Maybe they was counting years differently than we was. Just like in the first books of the Bible, we didn't know what a day was. I don't know.
I don't know either. I mean, so he's saying please release. Then he said so I can go home. Have you forgotten? But he says he can go home to his country, not necessarily to his father and mother's place where he believes his brother is. But he does eventually go in that direction.
I think that he's like, I don't think it's release as in what it's too release can mean like, yes, you like release from like your agreement, but also like send me on my way with all this that I have, gotten, like my wives and my kids and blah blah blah. Don't just say, all right, you banished or something like that. And it's probably a
It
respect
says,
thing.
let me take my wives and children,
Yeah,
for I have earned them by serving you, and let me be on my way.
yeah,
It's not really like, hey, 7 years have been up. So in about 2 weeks, me, the kids, the wives, and such, we're gonna be out. It's just really, it's just, I guess, really passive versus assertive. But
I also think, I mean, clearly at this point, Levin is a man of, great wealth and power. So it could have been a thing where he like, changed the circumstances or maybe lied on Jacob and be like, oh, he stole from me this and this, and then they might have killed him. I don't know. Because
let's
he
just say you need a blessing to be able to go. It's not like you can just be like, yeah, this is what I'm about to do. It's like, hey, remember what we said? Time is, has been up. Can I leave now?
or
Um,
it's a thing where like, I mean, yes, his servant, he was done working for his wives, but he was still working for Levin. So it's like, oh, can I get fired?
fine.
Can you release me? When you get a new job and your old job gotta release you before you can go to your new one, your new destiny. You gotta ask.
So what do you feel about this? What is what it's on 28. Tell me how much I owe you. So I don't think this man was getting paid the whole time.
He wasn't. That's what I'm saying. He worked past his I owe you for my daughters. And now he was just working for him, I guess. And he was supposed to be bookkeeping. He wasn't keeping books.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, by my child, you owe me 4 cows. You owe me a new daughter because these two is wild.
I don't think he want no nothing new. He good where he at. But then he says, whatever it is, I'll pay. Whatever it is. I was like, really? I actually I put really question mark. Like, is this man finally about to honor his own word? Is there any other tricks you have up your sleeve, Uncle? That's what I'd have said. Like, are you sure? And no, he wasn't. So then he's saying, what wages do you want? How much you want me to pay? Because he got money. I gave you the money. And so Jacob was like, no, I don't want money. I mean, like money. Give me the. Well, hold on. Do they have money at this? Yeah, they have currency, I guess. But more so something that will be like a residual type of thing. Like I want something that's going to continue to give me. So and these are his children and grandchildren. You should want to, and this man has worked hard and blessed you greatly. So I don't understand why in 35 he go and do what he did. I mean, did you read 35 the way that I read 35, as in he gave exactly what Jacob wanted to his sons
Yeah.
and dipped out? Okay, yeah, because it was like, did he do what I thought he did? Because it kind of reads it. It says he placed them in the care of his own sons, who took them in 3 days' journey where Jacob was. So I had to really study that to be like, does this mean that he gave them to his sons and they'd be back in 3 days? Like he took them on a little trip, or are they going to where Jacob is? Like he's going to take them from one part, like maybe the flock is in one city and they're bringing them to Jacob to deliver them, type of thing.
I read it
But
as
you see that Jacob stays back, as in Jacob was where the flock was. They took the flock away, and
yeah.
Jacob, I guess, knew such a thing and was like, you know what, I'm about to do? I'm about to make this concoction of juice and give it to the herd.
So I think that well, when it says 3 days journey, I think that they just took them, like, oh, they just moved them to another city that's just 3 days
Hit
away.
him. They hid him.
Yeah, and
They
just
hid him from him.
hid them there or whatever. But at the same, so in my mind, I feel like even though even though Jacob stayed behind and he noticed that the speckles were gone, I think he was already planning to do his little concoction because that's who Jacob is.
That's what I'm about to say too. I was like, he has his own tricks. What? And I said, what kind of recipe is this? But I felt like he really planned on taking the whole herd,
Mm-hmm.
and his uncle foresaw, like, you
That's what he said. You really my flesh.
my nephew. I know you about to do me dirty. I gotta do you dirty first, and that's something hard. I was watching I was watching The Last OG. It's a show with Tracy Morgan and Tiffany Haddish. And one of the friends on there is into this bad life, and he's trying to swindle another person that's into that bad life. And he's like, why are you doing that? And he was like, ain't no honor amongst thieves. Like, we can't be about this life and still be trying to honor certain things. Like, if you're gonna be bad, then you're gonna be bad, type of thing. But when you're in a life like that, you can't trust anyone, even though they're your man, even though they're your best friend, your cousin, your sibling, your father. So that's already hard. You don't have anybody necessarily really on your side until it's like better for them to be somewhere else on somebody else's side. But also, you're always trying to think in a way where you have to project that this person might be trying to trick you. So you got to then be bad for no reason, possibly, and really mess up when that person probably was trying to be honorable. So I don't know who was worse, because Jacob could have had the intentions on doing his uncle dirty, but this is, mind you, after his uncle has already done him dirty anyway. But then his uncle goes and do him dirty again. And it is the whole mess. But everything happens the way it was supposed to happen. But it's just, I'm looking at this like, these people ain't never gonna get it together. So he does his nephew Grime. He takes the block. His sons are in on it. He leaves. Jacob is there. He makes this concoction of peeled branches and almond milk and all of this. Like, it sounds like some stuff we would drink now. And then we all be spotty and freckled. But he does this, and the flock starts to birth strong offspring. And so he did this around mating time, which leads me to believe, and I know animals have a shorter time of reproducing than we do at times, but I don't know that it goes by super fast. Like, this ain't no 3-day situation. So, well, to my knowledge. So they mate in front of the branches. They drink the juice or the stuff that he made, and they come out the way that he needed them to come out. And he does not do this for the ones that he deems uh like flimsy, like little Eevee type ones, weak, weak ones. And this is how he built his own flock. Basically, he built his own flock with his own tricks, and then he leaves. It turns. Morgan's going to get into 31 later, but it's just this spiral of just nonsense that's happening between this new family. I mean, I don't know if Jacob wants to feel like everywhere I go, bad follows. I don't know, but that is the end. That's how this ends. But the situation is not over, of course. So I don't have anything else to say about that part, except for it's just back and forth with them.
All I have to say is that Leah and Rachel are a great example of why I know that Sister Wives is not my calling.
I don't think it's for many of us.
I mean, some people are electing to join that lifestyle, but I know for me,
many, many of us, that's not our thing. I don't see how that ever works. I just don't. I watched the show Big Love on HBO, and it didn't work. I was about to watch Sister Wives, but
I do watch that. I have watched it in the past. I don't watch it that much anymore. But they all elected to do it, and they seem, for the most part, to believe that there were solid reasons for having it. And to some extent, it makes sense.
No, it makes sense to have a community raise your children.
Yeah.
That's what makes, to have your neighbors look out for your child and you look out for your neighbor's child. But we don't need to be sleeping with each other's husband or sharing one husband. And how come we can't get help from the men? Why the woman got to share? Why the men ain't sharing? So,
So I
not that I'm any of that. I'm just wondering, like, they never try to do this in reverse.
they have so I recently saw one and it was like the woman said that she was fine with that type of setup because she did not want to emotionally take on the responsibility of being someone's everything. You get if you get what I'm saying, how she kind of explained it. And she was like, so if this other person is able to give you, 20% in terms of like business savviness that I can't give you, instead of me trying to stress myself out, now you're getting poured into the way that you need to, and that then translates to our family and how you're taking care of us, and it benefits the ecosystem. That was her logic. It didn't even have anything to do with like religion, how other people's justifications are more religious based. And so I can say that I understood that trying to be someone's everything is mentally and emotionally draining to a certain extent, but I don't think this is
That nobody is ever anybody's
yeah, that's
everything,
what I'm saying. Trying to do that, yes, it is. But people,
but it's never required. Like you're not like like right now. My husband's somewhere else. He's not like, when's my wife going to get off that call with me? Like, no, he's doing him. Like when I'm not piece of your everything and your every minute, go find something else to occupy your time.
yeah,
There
another
are
woman.
people. No, no, right now and that's probably why my Wi-Fi acting like this. He has his own small group. He's probably down there talking to people in the church or selling some real estate. I don't know, but or playing with the kids. We got 3 kids, so I'm just saying like that might be false to say that you won't be able to do something that you have never had an experience of ever even trying. You saw a bad marriage probably and said that I don't like how that person requires this much out of that person, and that person isn't able to step up and be everything that person needs. So you have this falsehood of what you think marriage is, and you discount it before you even get into it. I guess because you have the respect that once you're in marriage, it's not like you can just get out for the respect that you have for it. So I understand that from what we all only can go off of our experiences. But she should have did a little bit more digging before she was like, "This is the right piece of pie for me." Like,
Well, but you see that is basically what happened here. If Rachel would have had that same mentality, she probably would have been less selfish of Jacob's time, because she would have been like, Leah can give you something that I can't. Children. Like, I can't give that to you for whatever reason right now. I know this is something that's important to you. Make sure you sow that itch with your other wife or your sister. Um, at the same vein, Leah could have been like, I know I'm not really your cup of tea, and you don't find me mentally pleasing and aesthetically pleasing. Go hang out with Rachel because I know she feeds your other portions of you that I don't. So if you relate it to this particular situation, it does make sense. However, I it's just not.
but in all that, it's all about how. But in that, it's the pleasing of him, and they're not getting what they need. Like Leah wants that type of attention. It would be different if you said, "Hey, because if we were talking to Jacob, hey, because you have these 2 wives, love them both, treat them both equally as much as you can, love on them enough of whatever capacity they needed to be." That's asking a lot of a man who wanted 1 wife, though. This was never what I wanted. So Levin is to blame for, I mean, everybody's to blame for their own thing, but he is the center of the beginning of how this whole spiral into anything that it didn't need to be. But if Rachel would have been in a relationship with Jacob and not been able to produce children, who knows how he would have started looking at Leah anyway.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, because that happens in a lot of marriages where you can't have children, so then the spouse starts to look elsewhere, or the wife is like, I can't have kids, I might as well be with anybody. Like, so I mean, it had many opportunities to go wrong. This is the route of wrong they chose. But but there was a route of good that they could have chose given just the situation. Like Laban could have married off Rachel the way that he should have, married Leah to her own husband. They could have had their kids. And then, it still would have been the years later, possibly when she had Joseph, but they would have been content in their marriage, hopefully, and it been strong enough. Or she would have still offered her maid. I don't know. So, but yeah, again, we learn so much from the Bible, but I want to make sure that we take from it and we learn from it, and share with others that, like, you don't have to be like this. Look, it happened right here. It didn't turn out well. Or look what this person did. It turned out well. You should probably, do this. So this is another example of what not to do. So hopefully, yeah, Jacob didn't diffuse their sibling rivalry the same way possibly their father didn't, and he could have been stronger in that area, and he knew that you can't be living with people and not know that they have this type of relationship, and you don't try to diffuse the situation by saying, no, I'm not about to just sleep with you because you traded some fruit in time, or no, I'm not going to sleep with your maid because you're feeling some kind of way about your sister. All of that. He could have changed some things too. So, but that is where we lie. Where is next? Next is Genesis 31. Jacob returns home. So we see that he eventually does leave. It's some shenanigans with leaving too. So uh, I love 14. Genesis 31:14. But are you gonna do 31 and 32?
Yeah.
Or you gonna do 31, 32 and throw in 3?
I mean, 33 is a little two-piece pow pow.
Yeah, because 34 is on a whole nother kick. And that's Dinah too. For Dinah.
All right, yeah, I'll do 31 through 33.
Okay, so 31 through 33. Can you say those titles while I type them in so people can see those? But just so people know something of what is to come.
So we are starting a new segment, and this is Jacob's return home. So first he says he flees from Laban. He don't just walk away; he flees. Um, and then Laban pursues Jacob. Jacob makes peace treaty with Laban. Jacob warms his brother Esau's buns with some gifts. Jacob even wrestles with God, and he eventually makes peace with his brother Esau.
Yeah, all of that. That's a lot that happens.
Find out
That's
what
it.
happens next on God's chosen family
With cookies.
in Christ. I'm Cookies.
Are you really?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I don't want to do it. You did it already.
Yep. Cut.
I'm Rachel.
My dad gonna show ain't Leah.
Yes, you are, Leah.
I don't
You
know
the
what was
big
her business.
sister.
I'm the big sister, so I gotta be Leah. Things would have been different. Because after he had a slice of my pie.
First of all, I'd have been like, if he would have mistook you for me, she is a whole foot shorter, Jacob. What's good? What is up?
Meaning he was really into me in the first place. So
Big
he just
Jake.
was trying to say that so that he could get two people because he knew. I don't know what he got you here for, to be honest. I just don't know.
Big
But
Jake. Big Jakey. You cannot say you was swindled.
right, like they just, I can imagine, like, I mean, it really just said that her body type was different, but I don't know, the sparkle in the eye, she ain't have it. I don't know. But yeah, so that is it because we are at,
We are over.
yeah, because right now we're just saying 4 minutes, but I know good and well. I don't know why it's saying 4 minutes. But
What if it only recorded 4 minutes?
Now I'm watching the live chat right here. That's us. So, but that's all, people.
Oh wait,
If you are not familiar with my Patreon, it's at patreon.com/print pray slay, and that is how you're able to watch these Bible studies live. What are you doing with the cookie? What are you doing?
you're supposed to cheers me.
Oh, I ate all my cookies, man. I ate them all. Then I'm gonna go eat crab legs. Tomorrow is my first day of school with scholars, so I'm gonna need more cookies in a second. But yeah, Patreon is where we're able to put all this together and spend the time with you guys. We would really love your support over there. But if you are watching this and it's not live, replay. I would like to know what your comments are below, and I definitely reply to all comments. So I would like your feedback, especially if we had a question here and we were like, we don't know, and you have the answer. All right. Other than that, any last words? Morgan.
Deuces.
Bye.